There you go, you're on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to CPA Business Breakthroughs. I am Dominique Molina, President of the American Institute of Certified Tax Coaches, and I am super excited that you're joining us today. We're getting a lot of response on our Google Plus page, so thank you and welcome. I will definitely make this worth your while for the next hour, so I really appreciate you taking some time out to share your day with us. And I'm super excited to have with us today a very, very successful CPA and certified tax coach on the line with us today, Robert Gambardella, who was the winner of our 2012 CTC of the Year Award. And no surprise there, though, because Robert is a mover and a shaker. He has successfully built an extremely successful CPA business, leaving his job in corporate America. And we'll talk a little bit about that, about kind of leaving your comfort zone, so to speak. And he's been really phenomenally good at taking what can be a very daunting task on the marketing side of your tax business and translate that into recurring revenue streams. And so I'm super excited to talk about that. He's really, really great at networking, so he's going to be sharing with us some secrets to getting a new lead every single day of the year. He'll talk to us a little bit about his secret sauce, if you will, for his elevator pitch and how to get potential partners or referral partners to really remember you. And really, Robert's phenomenal too at lead follow-up and what he does, sort of his method to following up with those leads, nurturing those leads, getting his leads to know, like, and trust him so that ultimately when they're ready to request a tax plan and work with Robert, he is the first person that comes to mind. So, Robert, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dominique.
So, Robert, I'd love to just help everybody with us today get to know you. And, you know, your story is unique in some ways, and in a lot of ways, it's very similar to how a lot of CPAs start. And, of course, you got your education and your CPA license, but tell us a little bit about how you got your start in public accounting and how you decided to focus on tax.
Sure. So, yeah, I guess right after college, just like most of us, I went off and joined the firm. I started with McGladrey, sort of a national firm, but not one of the top-tier firms, and had a great experience there. But I was more of a resume person. Like I wanted to be, CFO of some Fortune 500 company someday. It was always my dream, because I guess that's what they tell us we're supposed to be. So I sort of used them as a stepping stone to get into PricewaterhouseCoopers. But even in public accounting, I was always in the audit department. I never was a tax person. And so I know we just sort of recognized it yesterday, but right around 9/11, I don't know, I was sort of rethinking my whole everything. I think a lot of people were. And I decided public accounting wasn't for me. I was never going to be a salesperson. I never saw myself that way. I was incredibly introverted and just, I could never see myself as a salesperson. And so, making partners someday, I just figured wasn't in the cards for me. And so I went and looked for a corporate job and started GE Capital. And got in their technical accounting group and did some really good things there and became controller and sort of just progressed I guess that job just sort of owned my life. It was around the clock hours, it was craziness, and
well, talk a little bit about that, because I know that a lot of CPAs kind of take that same pathway because they realize the brutality of this business, and they think that sometimes going the corporate route is maybe a rescue plan, if you will, to pulling yourself out of those demanding hours. So when did you start to catch on that maybe you just traded one bad situation for another, or I don't want to use the word bad, I guess, but difficult working situation for another?
It didn't take long to figure it out that it's just the way of the world, or the way everything's about productivity, especially in a big company like that. And I don't know where they found the people that work there, but everyone was sort of rowing the same boat, and it just seemed like it was just natural to work that hard or that long. And after I got married, I started to realize there's no way I can keep that pace up and expect things to go well. And so I made a decision just to move closer to home. I had a 3-hour commute, or an hour and a half both ways, and it was just time to take a job close to home, so at least I can cut that part of my day out. And took another controller role at a company called PerkinElmer, a health science company. And with those extra 3 hours a day that I saved in commuting, I decided I was going to teach myself to do taxes, with the idea that, hey, someday, maybe someday far off in the future, eventually I just want to run my own business and be my own guy. But I knew nothing about tax. I'd never worked in a tax department, so I was just going to teach myself 3 hours a day and sort of reinvest that time.
So you saw that as, at some point you're saying that after 9/11 you did start to see entrepreneurship as something that would lead to a better quality of life, and you mentioned getting married and having that family time. So you started to see this possibility of building a business that could be support the lifestyle that you were thinking about creating for yourself.
Yes, I mean, my whole life I always had some sort of business, whether it was, I don't know, detailing cars, or I always owned a business, but it was always a sideline thing. And so I kind of stayed on that career path that we're all, the one we learn to do. And so I never really saw the business side of things really being my sort of bread and butter. Like, I could truly be self-sufficient. And seeing how dependent people were on their jobs, and it's sort of the stuff that started happening in 2008, 9, and by then I was a finance director at PerkinElmer, and a lot of my job was every quarter, a list of people would go around, and people would get the notification that their job has been taken away. A lot of the projects that I would work on would be how can we move more jobs to China or something like that, and it just felt very unpatriotic. I mean, it was horrible. It's not something I wanted to do. And so I sort of stayed with. Yeah, so I had the tax thing going on the side, but it was just tax returns, friends, family, that sort of thing. And owning a tax return preparation business, I knew that that wouldn't be exciting to me.
Talk about your income from the side business at the time, Robert. Do you have a sense for what your average fees were at this time, with the focus on tax return preparation? Or I heard you say friends and family, so were you charging it all, or were you just giving it all away?
I was probably charging just enough to cover the cost of the software and the books or whatever. $100, $150. There was no profit motive, really. Just I just wanted to learn. I was basically collecting guinea pigs at that point.
So your business at that point must not have seemed like an alternative then to your corporate job in terms of choosing, how you wanted to spend the rest of your career. At what point did you start to have a different vision for your business and thinking, okay, there might be a possibility here for me to step away from corporate and into my own business?
Not until I really started looking at the proactive tax planning side of things, where, okay, now I started to realize as a CPA, as a tax planner, that my real value wasn't in preparing the forms and delivering tax returns and all that sort of thing. It was really in how could I help these people get where they're trying to go. Is there things that I could do proactively to show that I'm worth more than just the guy who fills in boxes on the forms.
Sure.
And so when I started getting training, or that's sort of when I went through Certified Tax Coach, I started to really see that, well, that business is a year-round business. It's not just that 10 weeks a year. And so the light bulb sort of went on that, okay, well, if that's year-round revenue and I really focus on it and I build on it, then maybe I could replace salary from the day job.
So it sounds like you're almost saying like identifying this focus, a change in focus from preparation to planning was kind of an aha moment for you in terms of your career. And at that moment, it's almost sounding like that's when this side business, like all of your other side businesses in your life history, turned into a real career possibility there. You saw something different on that side of it.
Yeah, and as I got more and more practice with it, and I took on more and more clients, and I saw the outcome of my work, I guess, and the feedback I was getting from people, and the word of mouth. You know, something that's about as best affirmation you can get is you help somebody out, and they go and tell a friend, and words like that.
Yeah, talk a bit about that, if you will, for a moment. What was the feedback that you were getting? Because that's very encouraging and fulfilling as well. What kind of feedback were you getting from people working on the tax strategies, if you will?
Yeah, and in the beginning, it was just you know, the response was, "Hey, I've worked with so and so accountant for 20 years, or I've worked with so many accountants over the years, and not one of them has sat down with me and had this conversation before." Where the focus point was not last year, but next year. And so people were so receptive to that, they appreciated the the hand holding, I guess, or the coaching, or just the proactive mindset that kind of realized that's the role I really wanted to play. That was the real business model I wanted to have. Not just sort of the reacting at the end of the year and sort of telling people the score, how they did last year. It's, someone comes in my office right now, and I always point to the calendar and say, hey, there's 3.5 months left of this year. You could still change the answer. And they love
I like that.
Yeah, they love to have that conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And it is empowering, too, to feel like, you're not a victim of tax. Rather, you're really empowered to be able to change the answer, as you said. So that's pretty cool. But I know finance was an issue in this decision process for you, too, because you shared, it wasn't until you started to change your perspective on your business that then this side tax planning business, if you will, became a possibility, a gateway for you to actually make that transition from corporate to business ownership. So talk about the difference. You expressed going from breaking even on your tax software costs and doing tax returns for family and friends. So what kind of fee change did you experience on the tax planning side of things?
Well, just getting experience charging for tax advice or planning recommendations in the first place was sort of a hurdle I had to get over. And but I guess the more practice I had with it, the more confidence that built or grew. And I guess my biggest fear in making the leap was, would I be able to replace my salary? Because I had worked my way up the corporate ladder pretty high for a young guy, and it was, I knew it wasn't going to happen immediately, but I needed to know it could happen quick enough that we weren't going to starve. So I guess just over time, I grew the practice to where I could at least see it happening, or I knew it was possible. And at some point, and I'm not a risk taker, I just decided enough had happened in our personal lives where we'd seen things happen to people, and they never really had a chance to do the things they wanted to do in life. And I stopped sort of thinking of that, well, someday mentality, someday. One day I just woke up and said, well, how about tomorrow? And went for it.
That is very bold. So you just described not being a risk taker, Robert, and then going to someday is tomorrow. So tell us all about that thought process. What were your initial plans to replace your salary? I know that you're a planner, so you had to have something in mind for how you were going to make this happen.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, because at that point in time, I only had $30-something thousand in billings per year lined up. But at least it was a starting point. And so I knew I was going to have sort of a breakout year, or sort of burst onto the scene. And they say it takes 5 to 7 years to become an overnight success. And sitting, with my sideline business practicing for 5 to 7 years, so I figured my timing was just about right.
That's great.
Hey, and real quick, Dominique, I'm going to jump in. All the viewers watching, feel free to ask questions, and we'll try to jump in and answer those for you during the rest of the call today, okay?
Great, thanks, Scott. Yeah, we'd love to answer any questions you may have or feedback on Robert's story. I really appreciate you sharing the ins and outs of your story with us, Robert. So I know that everybody's interested to know, what kind of marketing did you initially have planned, or what did you find that was working? I know you've talked to us about the difference in terms of the work, your focus of the work, and that people appreciated more the planning, the being proactive and working with you and changing the answer, so to speak. So what was your initial plan, and what were some of the things that worked for you initially to get that exposure and to connect with potential clients?
Yep, so the first thing I did was I joined every networking group in town, youth groups, Chamber of Commerce, boards of nonprofits, mastermind groups, meetup groups. I knew I needed to just, I had been locked up in a cubicle for so many years that I didn't really know the people around town. So I just had to get out and meet people, and shake hands as if I was running for mayor, and just, sort of figure out who's who in my own community and let them know who I was. And so, my whole game plan was not to mail out 100,000 postcards. It was to shake 100,000 hands if I had to, and meet people personally.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love the enthusiasm, kind of getting out and getting to know people. When we spend a lot of time at our desk, sometimes it's hard to put yourself out there. For one thing, it can be a scary idea if you're new to networking or you haven't been networking for quite a while. And it's always hard being the new person. And I know you kind of refer to this method as bursting onto the scene. So you talked about joining some nonprofit boards and some networking groups. But take us through that process too. What is it like? What were some of the things you were concerned about initially in taking that approach and meeting people? What were your fears?
Well, my biggest fear is I'm an introvert. I was scared to death to go into a room full of people and talk about a business that I had sort of dabbled in. I couldn't claim to be an expert. I had dabbled in it for years, and I didn't really have the experience. But what I knew what I did have was something different or unique compared to other accountants. So if you compared my services to what everyone else was offering, I was the orange and everyone else was apples. And so, well, I didn't have much to go on. I'm not a polished speaker or anything like that, but I felt that my story was worth telling, and the more I told it, the more receptive I saw people were, or they'd see how excited I was about this huge choice that I made, and they sort of liked the story. And then when they actually came into the office, because they like this, they met this nice guy and they like this story. That doesn't save them money on their taxes. But when they'd make their way into the office and they saw that I could actually help them out, then 2 and 2 started to sort of come together, and things really picked up quickly. They really did.
Let's talk about that. You talk about being memorable and standing out. You use the term kind of in an apples to apples comparison. You weren't an apple, so that you're memorably standing out, and you said you're an orange. So let's talk a little bit about your script, if we can refer to it as a script, whether you call it a script or an elevator pitch. I know you have a really unique way that you approach that, and I think that's part of your success in the networking scene. So it would be great if you could share some pointers with the audience about what it is that you say to people to stand out and be different and not just be the CPA in the group.
Yep, so in the very beginning, the toughest part was approaching people, telling them I was a CPA with my own practice, but explaining why I had a day job at the same time. And so my thoughts around that was I would just create an alter ego and walk into these meetings to tell the story, I would explain to them that I was Bruce Wayne by day and Batman by night, and Batman was the superhero with the utility belt full of tax saving strategies that save people money on their taxes. And how could anyone forget the accountant who called himself Batman? You just can't, because the stereotype for an accountant is pretty boring, pretty quiet, not very bold. Definitely not the type of guy that would wear a cape and fly around town. So it hit home with a lot of people, and it actually helped me explain the whole day job versus building up the practice on the side. So it got me past that point to where people just wanted to hear more, so they'd listen. And the other thing I did, is get off the topic a little bit, is I got some training. Because I still didn't feel like I was a salesperson or all that confident in a room full of people. And the training I got was not business coaching, but more like personal coaching, like overcoming fear and gaining confidence and earning people's trust. Like when you get in a room full of people, you know right away, someone stands up and starts telling their story, and usually in the first 5 seconds you could tell, do I trust this person? Or do I just not trust this person? And so there's a certain sincerity or genuineness that, whether it was learned or something I guess have, it came across really well. And that, hey, I'm just another guy, trying to earn a living. I do something that's pretty unique compared to the rest of the people in my profession. And if you have a minute, I'd like to tell you about it.
That's great. It's really interesting to hear how well that works. I think it's really one of the things that's the difference between focusing on the planning versus the preparation. It's one of those little nuances in job descriptions that people don't often understand. And I think there's kind of this assumption by consumers that we all do the same thing. And that makes it very difficult for the consumer to make a decision as to who they're going to work with. And we're seen as all the same, and I think that leads to a lot of price comparisons. Well, there must be only one other thing then we can compare by, and that is price. And so I also love this Bruce Wayne analogy and the Batman analogy because it explains so well the difference in focus. You've taken a very purposeful step in your business to focus on the planning part of the work, and that's what's so valuable. That's the most valuable part about our relationships with clients as tax planners. And so I love that you stuck out there by talking in a language that people can understand. You stand out instantly from others, and I imagine getting some success with how you were meeting people, that must have boosted your confidence. But you also hit on something too that I think is a big confidence boost, and that is your ability to deliver results. So it's not just about putting a shine on people and saying I'm Batman, and then they get to your office and you really are just an ordinary tax preparer. You really are Batman. You can deliver. You can back up what you're saying with your technical expertise. And so getting those skills in terms of your ability to pick up any tax return and rescue people from the bad guy, the tax man, I think is really completes that whole picture.
Yep. And I guess what I learned immediately in that first couple of months where, I was on this sort of, I don't know, call it a client accumulation stage or, bursting onto the scene, the first thing I learned, and it goes back to why I left public accounting in the first place, is I never had to be a salesperson. All I had to do was earn people's trust, provide them good service, and deliver results. And if I did that, then I just basically hired a new salesperson because they were going to leave my office and go tell somebody else. Free marketing, word of mouth, all that stuff. I learned very early that I really didn't have to be the salesperson. I was afraid of becoming the whole time.
That's great. That's a really great point too. Is your ability to kind of have a sales force, if you will. Tell us a little bit about how you do that, because I think there's a couple of different approaches to getting referrals in life. They're sure great to get, and they're oftentimes unexpected when somebody pays you the biggest compliment they can in sending you business, but that doesn't pay your bills, the hope of getting a referral. So tell us about that. How did you transform your happy clients into salespeople for your business?
Yeah, what the funny part is I never asked them to, and I never incentivized them to. And I know there's programs where you can pay for referrals or offer something in return. And I was just sending thank you notes and cards and stuff like that, but never really incentivized people to do so. Just they felt that strongly, or they were that happy with the service. So if I could sort of set their expectations to one level and then totally over-deliver, it's sort of have that, I guess, wow factor. That wow, this guy is really he's really out to help people. Compared to all the other choices we have, there is no choice. That's the guy you go to, and he'll take good care of you. So I never had a formal program around it. It's a little bit formal now. So as I've learned over time. So when clients come in now and they ask me how my fee structure works and that sort of thing, I tend to tell them, well, I sort of get paid 3 different ways. One is through tax planning if you need it, if I can truly help you save some money. The second way is through ongoing services, whether that's the taxes, quarterlies, bookkeeping, that sort of thing. And the third way I get paid is if I make the person in front of me truly happy, you're going to go out and tell somebody else. You'll tell your friends, you'll tell your family, your colleagues. So I sort of let them know at the beginning that that's just another form of payment for me. Is if I have to deliver first, but if they're happy with the service, it's almost expected that they'll help me out in the form of referrals.
That's great. I love that. I love that, just being upfront and explaining to people how they can help you earn. So let's talk about fees, if we can, for a moment. You've taken us on this journey with you from working in corporate and starting a side tax preparation business, and you shared with us the struggles of barely breaking even with your tax prep software costs. But there's also some fear out there. There's a lot of fear in boldly stepping out and charging premium fees, particularly for tax planning. I meet so many CPAs that talk about, well, you can't do that. You can't charge outrageous fees for tax planning. We just include that with the tax return, or we charge an hourly billing rate. So can you share with the audience a little bit about your fees? What are your average fees now? And is that ever a fear that you had about getting paid what you're worth?
It was a fear in the beginning because I knew I was worth it. I guess I wasn't sure if I can convince someone that I was worth it. And over time, you get to, I sort of practiced with some tax planning projects in the beginning for lower fees, $500 just to sort of keep people honest, I guess. But the idea was to really get some practice or confidence with how to deliver and what really hits home with these people, so that I can sort of cut out the work that didn't really need to be done, but just focus on what really mattered. And slowly but surely, the average tax planning fee would grow to, they sort of start at $1,500 now, but now the average is somewhere in the $2,500 to $3,500 range. I sold a plan earlier this afternoon to somebody, a new client, for that amount. And so now it's just part of my business model. It's so routine and second nature that I don't really think about it. I've had the opportunity to work on much bigger projects that just had a bigger impact to the client, where there was 6-figure tax savings per year of potential or opportunity involved. And so I've done plans for up to $25,000. And you use the word outrageous. I don't think that's outrageous because the value is there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When the value's there, it makes it not outrageous to someone. It makes it a smart decision, really. If you're offering someone 6 figures in tax savings every year and they're not going to have to fork hardly any of that over to realize that savings, then it's really a smart investment choice on the consumer's part. Did you find that there was any pushback from your clients? I think that is the fear that's out there, is that somebody's going to laugh at you or reject you. I guess it's a fear of rejection, really. So tell us what the reality is. What is it like? You said that's just become part of your business now. That is your business model that you follow. So how do people respond to your fees?
There's never a negative reaction. There's I guess the way I position it is I'm always showing them what the value is up front. Just some legwork has to be done, and there's actually some work. So there's a fee involved, but I always tell them I'm never going to charge you for anything you don't need. So that's why we do some analysis up front to see if there's opportunities or not. And if there's not, I sort of give them a clean bill of health, and they appreciate that. Hey, at least we looked into things to see if there's something we can do, and through that you earn enough trust to get their go-forward business anyway. But for the most part, when people see the value, they like the conversation or the ideas or the suggestions that we're making, and they obviously like saving money on their taxes. But even just putting a guarantee, if I sense hesitation, I'll let them know there's a guarantee that, hey, if you don't like the outcome, I don't make an income. You just don't have to pay for the plan.
You've got a career as a rap artist there, Robert. I think I'm hearing a lot of cadence there to how you speak to people.
A little bit, yes.
Well, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty then, because you've shared with us, your journey. You had climbed really high up the corporate ladder, and I know that's always a concern for people when they're starting out, is how can I possibly replace my income? So share with us a little bit about the timeline from the day that you woke up and you said, forever starts now, or someday starts now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make the leap, and I'm going to start my own business. From that point until you finally cross that mile marker, if you will, of replacing your corporate income, what does that time frame look like for you?
Yeah, so it started really quick because I had no choice. I had to do all the marketing and networking, and I had challenged myself to do it, and but I found it really wasn't that hard, and so I sort of set out on this in November, and by the middle of that tax season, I had generated enough new clients that there was going to be over $100,000 of annual recurring business. So by that point, so it didn't take long. It took maybe 3 or 4 months before I started to really feel that, okay, I made a good decision here. I can at least get my bills paid, and let's see where I can take this thing. So the confidence factor at that point was, there's no fear that we're going to lose our house or something crazy. Then it just became, and can I start winning the right clients, the right business, sort of just deliver on what I had already promised. So it quickly shifted from how can we get more work to how can we get all this work done.
Good problem to have.
Yeah.
You really used a key word there, though, too, when you're talking about your confidence, and that was recurring income. So it's not just enough to get these great tax planning fees in the door. I mean, on the high side, charging $25,000 for a plan, that's a nice windfall. But your confidence really grew when you knew that you could pay your bills, and that's recurring income. So share with us a little bit about how you set up recurring revenue streams in your business. What does that look like?
Yeah, so and a lot of people are doing it these days, whether it's, you call it value billing or a monthly retainer, but basically what I'm doing is just bundling services or packaging up what I'm going to do for a business owner over the course of the year. And it becomes a list of services, but half the services on that list I was never getting paid for before. Phone calls, emails, meetings, all that kind of thing. All those quick questions that sort of come through, and we don't really get the bill for them, or I guess I'm too nice to bill for them. So I would just bundle those into a package, billed at a flat monthly fee, so I never have to keep track of time or send an invoice. I could just get the work done that I've been hired to do. So it saved me a ton of administrative time. And when I set people up on these recurring monthly billing plans, they're all on an ACH. It's automatic. I don't have to wait for a check to arrive. Just the first of the month comes, everybody gets billed. It's automatic. It just works.
So I'm sensing a theme here with you, Robert, because you talked about you didn't have a need to hire a sales staff because you've got all of these brand evangelists out there that are tooting your horn for you. And then, you've got these bundled service agreements. You're following the CTC model for doing monthly billing for bundled service agreements. So you're getting paid up front and automatically. So I can see there that there's some automation involved. You don't have a need for this large staff to do all of your billing. I'm also seeing, I heard you say you didn't track your time and things like that. So you really are onto something here. You've got sort of this small business model, if you will, but with big revenues and big profits coming in.
Yeah, it's a pretty lean machine. And in the process of all this, so here I am 3 years later, and if I take a step back and look at where this is going, I was sharing office space with an attorney downtown in an old house to get started, and now you could probably tell by the sun in my eyes, I'm in the 9th floor of a skyrise, the most beautiful office complex in Shelton. It's awesome, and we have some good space here, and so I intentionally took more office space than I needed because I know I'm going to not only grow into it but probably grow out of it. And so the only help I've hired, I have a tax guy who helps me with the input, tax return input, and literally just this week I finally hired an admin who can help me with bookkeeping and just sort of keeping me out of the administrative stuff. That up to this point I've done it all myself. It's just gotten a little bit overwhelming, but it's just a good problem to have.
Yeah. So you've kind of fast forwarded us here in your timeline, and it's now, I think you said 3 years later.
Yep.
So what point in that timeline did you realize that you were not only going to replace your corporate income, but you were going to surpass it, and then really surpass it, like really see this as a money-making machine for you?
Yeah, it would have to be right around this point last year, because that's when I had sold that first major tax plan that I mentioned, and it was about this time last year that the income from the business had not only replaced my own salary and bonus, but started to exceed it. And so it was right around this point last year, and this year's going really well. And in anticipation of what next year is going to be, I'm already sort of putting the systems in place and the people in place because I see it coming. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop the growth right now if I tried.
Well, part of that growth comes from not only your message, your memorable message, and really standing out. You've talked to us about turning your clients, your happy clients that you're solving problems for and delivering real results for, turning those into referral machines for you. But there's a follow-up process that has to happen because people aren't always ready to buy right when they learn of your services or when they meet you. That's not always the ideal time for them to make a decision, and especially when you're talking about leaving your trusted advisor to move to somebody else. That's a tough decision for people. So, that's where the follow-up piece of this puzzle becomes so important. Tell us about your follow-up process, and you've done really well with your systems there. Can you share with us a little bit about how you follow up with prospective clients from the time that you meet them till the time they actually start paying you for services?
Sure. So one way is just reaching out every once in a while, so it was very important for me to at least keep track of who those prospects were. So I had started a spreadsheet at one point that just sort of listed them out and just kept track of how often or how frequently I was touching them or reaching out. And what I found was the more times I'd call or email, not that I was hounding them, I guess, but if I had an idea for them or just wanted to see how business was going, I think what these people found was I was reaching out to them more than their current accountant was. And so the light bulb starts to go on that, well, maybe this guy is, really out to help me out here. And so, the prospect list or the lead list sort of got too long, and I started using an actual system to follow them, make sure I wasn't sort of missing anybody. And some things I would do was just add them to my. I write a monthly newsletter that goes out, where it's not even really technical tax talk. It's really just me sort of speaking from the heart. Here's what's going on in my business or my family and all that kind of stuff. And people just like the personal touch that they weren't really getting somewhere else. And eventually, slowly but surely, they may write out one more year with their current person or whatever. But eventually, they tend to reach out. There was a guy earlier today that reached out through LinkedIn. I had worked with him 3 years ago or 4 years ago now at my old job, and he's sort of been lurking behind the scenes, sort of watching the content that I'll put out, whether it's a blog or a post or some achievement or something. When the people are ready or they really know they need the help, they'll reach out as long as you're top of mind. So the key was to always just be top of mind.
Sure, and I heard something in there too that's so important, and that's the concept of keeping score. Kind of keeping an idea of, number one, you got to get information. You've got to be organized so that you can stay in touch with people through your newsletter, through emails, that sort of thing. But the other thing too is kind of keeping track of your touches. How often you're reaching out and speaking to them. Things that you're learning about them along the way, and the results of what's happening, so that you can make changes to your process, make changes in how you speak to people, and what sorts of things people are responding to. And I think that's so important. So your Excel spreadsheet, if you will, almost becomes like a score sheet.
Yep. Yeah, I was in the very beginning. I was tracking the conversion percentage, and that's what was important to me. But then what I would find was I'd convert the smaller clients the fastest, and so just to get the that almost trick the metric. And so I call time out, and then I go, no, I better track something else, like average annual value per client or something like that, so that I'd focus on following up with the bigger clients first. So I sort of learned that lesson early on, that I was fooling myself if I was just winning the business who was sort of on the target, but not necessarily the bullseye. So sort of over time, just learning to focus on the bullseye, not necessarily everything out there.
That's a really great point. You make it seem so easy though, Robert. But here's the thing: if it really were this easy, everybody would be doing it. There's over 400,000 small tax business owners out there, but people aren't doing this. Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. Yeah, I wish it was something I could teach. There's still an it factor. There's a personality thing that it almost works to my advantage. I think that I'm not this polished, sharp speaker, where it's sort of okay to just be yourself, and it comes across well in conversation. And I think people have this vision or picture of what a salesperson or what a successful business owner is supposed to be. But when you're just sort of an ordinary person who can do extraordinary things through tax planning, you can still set yourself apart. And, I don't know, it tends to work well. So I guess that's a roundabout way of saying really anyone can do it. It's committing to it and really getting out from behind the desk and going out and meeting people. Because that's how you're going to build trust faster that way.
Sure. Well, so just to kind of bring back, I think, some key themes from our discussion today, though. I think, you know, you shared with us some ideas kind of getting out of your own way, you know, taking a more relaxed approach. And what I love about your story is you started out by saying, you know, you didn't do the partner track in the big public accounting firm because you didn't like selling. And I love that you found a way to build a business that doesn't include you selling anything. You've talked to us about just being yourself, networking with people, getting to know people, delivering really good results in terms of the tax planning, and allowing people to do the selling for you, which I think is really cool. And the results piece of it, I think, is a really key theme here too, because you have to look at what kinds of results are you delivering. And I think we're all heroes every single day in the tax business, keeping our clients out of jail and making sure that they're in compliance with everything. But at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves as advisors, what kind of results, what are the results that really matter to our clients? And there's nothing better than being able to help your small business owner clients add more money to their personal bank account every single day. And that's what you're doing really well, is your ability to take a look at any situation and identify ways that you can make some subtle changes to change the answer, to use your words. And so whether you're working with a small business and you can save them over $100,000 a year on their tax bill, meaning their personal bank account goes up by $100,000 a year, or you're working with a very small business and you're saving them $15,000 or $20,000 a year, those are the types of results that really stand out, and those are the types of results that your clients want to share with other people, because it's those types of results that really matter and are memorable. So I think getting out of your own way, getting to know people, getting seen, taking advantage and making use of your strengths, the fact that you don't want to sell, and so finding a way around that, using your clients to do the selling for them, and you do that by really giving them a piece of you, and delivering really powerful results, and then keeping score, following up with people, having a really good follow-up strategy for how you're going to keep in touch with people really matters as well, and makes a big difference.
I got a quick question for you, Robert. And I think you mentioned it, the results part. Do you have any specific stories on how you've been able to take a client and give them such good results to where they're able to see that much more money in their bank account?
I have lots of stories.
Give us one, man. Give us one.
I guess the big one that we were just mentioning before, and I just talked to him last week. He gave me a call because he's, like I mentioned before, he's from Auburn, so we're basically a football game soon. But he just had a follow-up question on a strategy that we want to implement this year instead of last year when we did the tax plan. And he had mentioned, hey, when we did the tax return, I got that $90,000 refund that you mentioned I was going to get, and I was able to skip the fourth quarter estimated tax payment of $40,000. So, you know, you told me you were going to save me $130,000, and I saved $130,000. That's crazy. You know, that's great. So I have a few for life there. But you know, whether it's that story or you know, just the people I met with earlier this week, you know, it doesn't have to be big dollars. It's just big dollars to them. You know, it's dollars they didn't have to afford. It's the pain that they had in writing that big check to the IRS every year or every quarter that they don't have to write anymore, or you know, not as big anyway. And it's what they can turn around and do with that. You know, them feel good. I feel good.
So for all of the tax nerds joining us today, like me, and I hope I don't offend you by calling you a tax nerd too, Robert, because you are a tax nerd now officially. You have left the audit side. You've gone on your corporate journey. You are officially a tax nerd. But so for all of us that have an understanding of how this works, what were some of the strategies that you used to create that massive amount of savings? You know, when you're talking over 6 figures per year, or even for a small business owner where you're saving them $10,000 or $15,000 a year, what are some of the strategies and the tools that you use for that?
Yeah, the thing is, the strategies are so sort of routine or second nature to us that we don't really think of them as strategies. But it tends to be the same mistakes over and over that business owners make. Wrong business entity, or either wrong retirement plan or no retirement plan at all, where they're not putting enough aside. Issues with it could be whether or not they're bringing their family into the business the right way, or the ownership structure could change. All these little things that they could or should be doing. Some people forego deductions out of fear. They think if they just overpay the IRS, they're safe. And so it tends to be the same issues over and over that everyone has in common. Just the unique situation that each business owner is in is to figure out what's the best combination of recommendations to make to these people.
Sure. You mentioned, choosing the wrong entity, for example. Boy, I just shudder sometimes when I hear people talk about business entity and everyone's like, the S Corp is fabulous. I heard I should be an S Corp, so by golly, I went out and I formed an S Corp. But there's really so much more that goes into that decision, because there's tax benefits associated with each type of entity there is, whether you're an LLC or you're a C corporation owner. We're seeing such power now in the value of arbitrage between a low C corporation tax rate and the high rates that we're now seeing on the individual level. And so, yeah, I think even just analyzing the business entity, you can be of so much value. And even using multiple entities and income shifting techniques, amongst those can be such powerful strategy to deliver those types of results.
So real quick, I'm going to jump in here. We got a question. Can you touch on the annual maintenance, and do you just do one plan, or do you create new plans every year that actually impacts the client?
Yeah, so typically for me, a plan is sort of a one-time event where once we have the business set up the way it needs to be, or should be, and they're kind of on the right path or heading in the right direction. And so the ongoing maintenance plan revisits the planning. In other words, there's maybe a year or a year-end tax planning session built into that package, so that if anything new comes across the pipe, we'll talk about it during those sessions and just add it to what they need to do. And that's where you can actually get fees into that monthly. It includes those types of meetings and recommendations, not just the tax return itself or the calculations that they need, but more the value that they want and that they're looking for on an ongoing basis. So those, the monthly packages, just depends on how much they put in the bag, how much hand holding and help do they really need from me over the course of the year. And so those can range from a wide range.
Yeah, what I love too, Robert, about the bundled service agreements is that it really enables us as proactive advisors to change our own behavior in our relationship with our clients. And, most of us really love the idea of being able to reach out and have these meetings with people year round so that we're in the know of what's going on and we can give advice before things happen, because too many times we don't find out about things until tax filing season. Oh, I sold this business, or oh, I bought this property, or oh, I did this, or oh, I did that. And you can't change history. You can't rewrite it. And so our hands are kind of tied. But you know, the reality is we have to just survive our workload too, and we've got to go through our day-to-day pile of work, and we're lucky if there's any time left over to reach out and be proactive with our clients. So what I really love about you know, the bundled service agreements and getting paid on a monthly basis, it allows us to jump off of that reactive wheel, that reactive cycle that we get in as advisors, and pull ourselves over onto the proactive wheel so that we can reach out and instigate that relationship with our client. And it doesn't mean you never fall off of that proactive wheel, but it's about having strategies for how to yank yourself back over, because that's really where the power is in building a really successful lifestyle tax planning business. And so have you found that that's been helpful to you too, is you know, knowing that you're paid in advance, has that been really helpful in terms of managing your calendar?
Yes, it really has. You know, I like the fact that it encourages the client to, you know, when something comes up or they have a question, they'll call, so that I can be in the loop early enough to do something about it. You know, so part of it's on them, and you know, I guess the monthly reminder that, oh, I just paid this guy, maybe I should call them up and ask them about whatever. But it keeps me in the loop. And a lot of these people, I just, you know, I guess the name I have for the package is the done for you package. You know, we're going to do your books, we're going to do this, we're going to do everything, so that we're so in the loop that we already know, we know before the client knows and what they should be doing next from a planning standpoint. So we're always sort of reaching out to them rather than them sort of pulling us out from behind the desk to help out. And the people that they just truly appreciate it.
So Dominique, you know, we got a few minutes left here. What should the viewers do if they want to learn more about this type of accounting practices or tax practices to be more proactive in their business? What should they do? Where should they learn about this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. And part of the reason we had Robert on today is because, Robert, I know you've made a commitment to not only improving your life and your practice, but you've made a commitment to give back to the industry. And so that's something that you and I share, is this mission of making this information available so that more and more tax practitioners can build a better business and thereby do better for their clients. So you're actually going to be co-teaching with me at our October Academy coming up here really soon, actually, in San Diego. It starts October 20th. So if you've enjoyed hearing from Robert today and you love the idea of some of Robert's strategies, and you can hear directly from him just by signing up for that class. You can get more information by going to certifiedtaxcoach.org and then just click on Become a Certified Tax Coach, and you'll get a lot more information. You'll find a lot of tips there on that site too that'll help you change the business that you're in and lead a much better life.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time that we have. Thanks, Dominique. Thanks, Robert. This has been a great call, and people will be able to see this this replay. Hopefully, within the next couple of days, we'll get that out.
Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate all your help. And Robert, thanks to you too. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time. And I know you've helped a lot of CPAs, and it's great. I really appreciate you being here.
Anytime. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining us today too, watching the replay and supporting our program. We will be back on the first Tuesday of every month. That is at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So we hope you come back and join us again for another episode of CPA Business Breakthroughs. Take care, everyone.